local band, laughed at David Gilmour with his acoustic guitar, calling him just another copycat boomer. What happened next, when the guitar legend quietly picked up his instrument and responded, became the most humbling moment in music history and proved why respect is earned, not assumed. It was a quiet Tuesday evening in September 2019 at the Troubadour, a legendary music venue in West Hollywood that had hosted everyone from Elton John to Nirvana during their rise to fame. The venue was hosting an open mic night, one of those informal gatherings where local musicians could showcase their talents, network with other artists, and sometimes catch the attention of industry professionals who occasionally dropped by to discover new talent. The Troubadour had been a launching pad for countless careers since the 1960s, and its intimate setting, with a capacity of just 400 people, created the kind of atmosphere where musical magic could happen without the pressure and spectacle of larger venues. On this particular evening, the attendance was modest, with about 50 people scattered throughout the venue's famously cramped interior, sitting at small round tables or standing near the bar that dominated one side of the narrow room. The atmosphere was relaxed and supportive, with most attendees being aspiring musicians in their 20s and 30s, nursing beers and waiting for their turn to perform, or simply enjoying the variety of acoustic performances that characterize these weekly events. The lighting was deliberately dim, creating the kind of ambiance that encouraged both musical experimentation and honest conversation about the challenges of making it in one of the world's most competitive music markets. David Gilmour had quietly entered the venue about an hour earlier, carrying a worn acoustic guitar case that showed decades of use, and wearing a simple black t-shirt and jeans that made him look like any other music enthusiast who might attend an open mic night. At 73 years old, with his gray hair and understated appearance, he could have been a retired studio musician, a longtime fan of live acoustic music, or perhaps a music teacher enjoying his evening off. His presence was so understated that most people in the venue didn't recognize him, which was exactly how he preferred it. Gilmour had been in Los Angeles working on some session recordings with an old friend who was producing an album for an up-and-coming artist, and someone at the studio had mentioned that the Troubadour's Tuesday open mic nights were worth checking out for their authentic, unpretentious atmosphere. After decades of performing in massive stadiums filled with elaborate concert productions, sophisticated lighting systems, and audiences of tens of thousands, there was something deeply appealing about the intimacy and simplicity of hearing music in its most basic form. Just a performer, an instrument, and an audience willing to listen without distractions. He had found a seat near the back of the venue, ordered a beer from the bartender who showed no recognition of his identity, and settled in to enjoy the variety of performances that open mic nights typically offered. The quality ranged from genuinely impressive singer-songwriters with obvious potential to enthusiastic beginners who were still learning their craft, but everyone was treated with respect and encouragement from both the audience and the other musicians waiting their turn to perform. It was the kind of supportive musical community that reminded Gilmour why he had fallen in love with music in the first place, back when playing guitar was about personal expression, rather than commercial success or maintaining a legendary reputation. About halfway through the evening, after he had heard several acoustic solo acts, a folk duo, and a blues guitarist who showed genuine promise, a local band called Electric Youth took the small stage. The group consisted of 4 musicians in their mid-20s who clearly took themselves very seriously. A lead singer who also played rhythm guitar, a lead guitarist with an expensive-looking instrument, a bass player with meticulously styled hair, and a drummer who had managed to fit an impressive kit into the venue's limited stage space. They had a polished look and confident stage presence that suggested they were more experienced than many of the solo acoustic acts that had performed earlier in the evening. Their sound was modern alternative rock, with clear influences from bands like Arctic Monkeys and The Strokes. The musicianship was competent, and the songs were well-structured, though the material lacked the kind of emotional depth or musical innovation that separated good bands from great ones. They performed 3 original songs to enthusiastic applause from their friends in the audience and polite appreciation from the other attendees. After their set concluded, the band members made their way to the bar area, clearly energized by their performance and eager to socialize with the other musicians present. They were in that confident post-performance mood where everything seemed possible, and their music felt more important than it had before taking the stage. As they waited for their drinks, the lead guitarist, Jake Martinez, noticed David Gilmour sitting alone at his table, the acoustic guitar case visible beside his chair. To Jake and his bandmates, Gilmour appeared to be just another older musician, probably someone who had been around the LA music scene for decades without achieving any significant success. "Look at that old guy with the acoustic," Jake said to his bandmates, nodding in Gilmour's direction. "I bet he's going to get up there and play some boring 70s cover song and think he's being deep." His bandmates laughed, caught up in the kind of youthful arrogance that sometimes emerges when talented young musicians begin to believe their own hype. The drummer, Mike Chen, chimed in. "Yeah, probably going to play Wonderwall or something equally original." The bassist, Sarah Williams, was slightly more charitable, but equally dismissive. "At least he looks like he actually knows how to play, unlike some of the people we've heard tonight. But you're right, it'll probably be some classic rock cliché." Jake took a long drink of his beer and became more vocal in his criticism, apparently emboldened by his friend's agreement and the attention their conversation was drawing from nearby tables. "I'm so tired of these old guys who think they understand music just because they learned a few chords in the 70s. They're all the same. Just another copycat boomer trying to relive their youth by playing songs that were never that good in the first place." The comment was made loudly enough that several people in the immediate area could hear it, including Gilmour himself. A few of the other musicians at nearby tables looked uncomfortable with the disrespectful tone, but no one said anything directly. This was, after all, supposed to be a supportive environment where musicians encouraged each other rather than tearing each other down. Gilmour himself showed no visible reaction to the comments. He continued to sit quietly, occasionally taking a sip of his beer and listening to the acoustic duo that had taken the stage after Electric Youth. His expression remained neutral, and he gave no indication that he had heard or cared about the criticism being leveled at him from across the room. But others in the venue had definitely noticed the exchange. Word began to spread quietly among some of the regulars who attended these open mic nights that the young band was being disrespectful to an older musician who hadn't even performed yet. The atmosphere began to shift slightly, with some people feeling uncomfortable about the negative energy that was being introduced into what was usually a positive, supportive environment. About 20 minutes later, the acoustic duo finished their set, and the open mic host, a veteran LA musician named Tom Rodriguez, who had been running these events for over a decade, took the microphone to call for the next performer. "Anyone else want to share some music with us tonight?" Tom asked, scanning the room. "Don't be shy. This is what we're here for." David Gilmour quietly raised his hand. "Great," Tom responded. "Come on up, sir. What's your name?" "David," Gilmour replied simply, rising from his seat and picking up his guitar case. As Gilmour walked toward the small stage, Jake Martinez leaned over to his bandmates with a smirk. "Here we go. Time for some boomer nostalgia. I bet he plays Dust in the Wind or something equally predictable." The band members chuckled, but their laughter began to feel forced as they noticed that other people in the venue weren't sharing their amusement. Several of the more experienced musicians in attendance were watching with interest rather than mockery, and a few people had their phones out, apparently recognizing something that Electric Youth had missed. Gilmour reached the stage and began unpacking his acoustic guitar with unhurried movements. The instrument was clearly well played, with the kind of worn finish that comes from decades of regular use by someone who truly loves their instrument. As he plugged the guitar into the small amp provided by the venue, he adjusted the settings with the kind of casual expertise that suggested extensive experience with live performance. "Thank you for letting me play," Gilmore said into the microphone, his voice carrying the kind of quiet confidence that comes from years of performing in front of audiences, both small and enormous. "I thought I might share something with you tonight." As he began to tune the guitar, making subtle adjustments with the precision of someone who understood exactly how his instrument should sound, Jake Martinez made one final comment to his bandmates, apparently unable to resist another joke at the older musician's expense. "Here comes another copycat boomer," Jake said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Let's see how badly he butchers whatever classic rock song he's going to attempt." That comment proved to be the most expensive mistake of Jake Martinez's musical career. Gilmore finished tuning his guitar, and without any lengthy introduction or explanation of what he was about to play, began the opening notes of "Wish You Were Here." But this wasn't a simple cover version or a nostalgic recreation of a familiar song. This was the original composer and performer, playing one of rock music's most beloved compositions with the kind of emotional depth and technical mastery that had made it legendary in the first place. The recognition was immediate among many people in the audience, though it took a few moments for the full realization to sink in throughout the room. The guitar work was unmistakably authentic. Not someone trying to copy David Gilmour's style, but David Gilmour himself, playing his own composition with the kind of emotional honesty and musical sophistication that had made him one of the most respected guitarists in rock history. As the song progressed, the atmosphere in the Troubadour transformed completely. Conversation stopped, phones came out to record the unexpected performance, and people began to realize they were witnessing something extraordinary. This wasn't just another open mic performance, this was a rock legend, playing acoustically in an intimate setting that allowed every nuance of his playing to be heard with crystal clarity. Jake Martinez and his bandmates were among the last people in the room to understand what was happening. As the song continued and the audience's reaction became more intense, they began to realize that their copycat boomer was actually the person who had written and originally performed the song they were hearing. The growing excitement and awe from the other attendees made it clear that they had completely misunderstood who they had been mocking. The performance was transcendent in every possible way. Gilmour's acoustic arrangement of "Wish You Were Here" stripped away all the elaborate production elements, synthesizer layers, and multi-track harmonies of the original Pink Floyd recording, while somehow making the song even more powerful and emotionally affecting than its studio counterpart. His guitar work was absolutely flawless, demonstrating the kind of technical precision that comes only from decades of dedicated practice and performance experience. Every note was perfectly placed. Every chord change was executed with mathematical precision, and his finger-picking technique revealed subtleties in the composition that were impossible to detect in the full band arrangement. But more than technical perfection, Gilmour's performance demonstrated the kind of emotional depth and musical maturity that separates competent musicians from true artists. His vocals were rich and expressive, carrying the weight of decades of life experience and artistic reflection. His stage presence was magnetic without being showy. He commanded attention through the simple power of authentic musical expression, rather than theatrical gestures or aggressive showmanship. The audience was completely mesmerized. People who had been casually chatting or checking their phones during earlier performances were now giving Gilmour their complete, undivided attention. The usual background noise of clinking glasses, quiet conversations, and shuffling feet had disappeared entirely, replaced by the kind of focused silence that occurs only when an audience recognizes they are witnessing something truly special. As the song progressed through its familiar structure, the gentle opening verse, the building emotional intensity of the chorus, the instrumental passages that showcased Gilmour's legendary guitar techniques, the energy in the room transformed completely. What had started as a casual open mic evening had become something approaching a religious experience for everyone present. When the song concluded with the gentle fade of the final acoustic guitar notes, the silence that followed was profound and meaningful. For several long seconds, no one in the troubadour moved or spoke, as if the audience needed time to process what they had just experienced and didn't want to break the spell by returning too quickly to ordinary reality. The silence felt respectful, almost reverent, as if applauding too quickly would somehow diminish the power of what had just occurred. Then the applause began, not the polite, encouraging appreciation that had followed most of the evening's performances, but the kind of sustained, emotional ovation reserved for truly transcendent musical moments. People were not just clapping, they were standing, whistling, and shouting their appreciation with an enthusiasm that seemed to surprise even the most experienced open mic attendees. Several people were visibly emotional, wiping away tears that had been triggered by the combination of beautiful music and the realization that they had just witnessed something historically significant. The ovation continued for nearly 2 minutes, with the intensity actually building rather than diminishing, as people fully grasped what they had experienced. Some attendees were frantically checking their phones to confirm what they suspected about the performer's identity, while others were already posting on social media about the incredible performance they had just witnessed. As the applause continued, Gilmour simply nodded his thanks to the audience with characteristic humility and began packing his guitar with the same unhurried, methodical movements he had used to unpack it. He wasn't seeking additional attention or trying to extend the moment. He had shared his music authentically and completely, and that was enough for him. There was no ego, no need for validation, no attempt to capitalize on the audience's enthusiasm for additional recognition. "Thank you," he said quietly into the microphone before stepping away from the stage, his voice carrying the same understated dignity that had characterized his entire performance. The aftermath was immediate and profoundly uncomfortable for Electric Youth. As Gilmour returned to his seat near the back of the venue, people throughout the room began approaching him to express their appreciation and, in many cases, their amazement at having witnessed such an unexpected and extraordinary performance. Word spread quickly among the attendees about what had just happened, and the story of the local band that had mocked David Gilmour before his performance became part of the evening's legend. Jake Martinez and his bandmates found themselves in the extremely awkward position of having publicly disparaged one of rock music's most respected and influential figures, and their comments had been overheard by dozens of people who were now fully aware of how spectacularly wrong they had been. The contrast between their arrogant predictions about boring 70s covers and the reality of Gilmour's masterful performance made their earlier criticism seem not just inaccurate, but embarrassingly ignorant and disrespectful. The social media reaction was swift and brutal. Several people in attendance had recorded portions of Gilmour's performance and had also captured audio of Electric Youth's disparaging comments. Within hours, the incident was trending on multiple platforms, with the band being universally criticized for their lack of respect and musical knowledge. The irony of calling one of rock's greatest composers a copycat while he performed his own original composition was not lost on the internet community. To their credit, the members of Electric Youth eventually approached Gilmour to apologize for their disrespectful comments, though it took them considerable time to work up the courage to face the man they had so thoroughly underestimated. Jake Martinez, in particular, seemed genuinely humbled by the experience and expressed both deep regret for his words and gratitude for the musical education he had received in the most public and embarrassing way possible. "I'm really sorry for what I said earlier, Mr. Gilmour," Jake told him, his voice shaking with nerves and embarrassment. "I had no idea who you were, but that's not an excuse for being disrespectful to another musician. Your performance was absolutely incredible, and I learned something really important tonight about making assumptions about people and about treating fellow musicians with respect." Gilmore's response was characteristically gracious and encouraging rather than condescending or vindictive. "We all make mistakes, and we all have things to learn," he replied calmly. "The important thing is that we keep learning and growing as musicians and as people. Your band clearly has talent. Just remember that respecting your fellow musicians is an essential part of being professional and building a sustainable career in this industry." The story of that evening at the Troubadour spread rapidly through social media and music industry networks. Videos of Gilmore's performance were shared thousands of times, and the incident became a cautionary tale about the dangers of judging other musicians based on age, appearance, or assumptions about their capabilities. For Electric Youth, the experience became a valuable lesson in humility and respect that ultimately improved both their music and their approach to working with other artists. Jake Martinez later said that being corrected so definitively and publicly by David Gilmour taught him more about professionalism and musical excellence than years of formal training had accomplished. For David Gilmour, the evening was simply another reminder of why he had always preferred to let his music speak for itself, rather than relying on reputation or past achievements to command respect. The quiet confidence he had shown in responding to mockery with musical excellence demonstrated why true legends don't need to prove anything. The incident became part of music folklore, a story that reminded everyone in the industry that talent and artistry can emerge at any age, and that respect for fellow musicians should be based on their capabilities, rather than preconceptions about their background or generation. If this story of musical humility, generational respect, and the power of letting your talent speak louder than words inspired you, make sure to subscribe and hit that thumbs up button. Share this video with anyone who believes that true artistry transcends age, and that the most powerful response to disrespect is simply demonstrating who you really are. Have you ever witnessed a moment when someone's assumptions were completely overturned by an unexpected demonstration of skill? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to ring that notification bell for more incredible stories about the moments when musical legends remind us why respect is earned, not assumed.